Hi guys, welcome to the latest episode of the On the Head podcast. I'm joined today by Jim Donnelly, who is the Executive Director of Active Community Networks. All right, Jim, thanks for joining me, mate. How are you?
All yourself.
Not too bad, not too bad. So tell me this, what is Active Communities Network? What do you do? What is it all about?
We're a charity that uses sport to engage with young people who aren't really engaging in other projects or aren't in education, training, or employment. We have our head offices in London. We have an office in Belfast, Portsmouth, Manchester. We have an office in Cape Town, and we use a methodology that we've been tried and tested, and we've been researched. In Belfast, we've been researched by Pete Sheridan and the University of Liverpool. We've had two pieces, or three, I think, done from Ulster University, and then we have lots of research in other areas. So our methodology is proven, and we try to focus on young people who are at risk or who are not engaging. And when you say at risk, people assume that you're talking about kids who maybe are involved in risky behaviours. But at risk can mean anything. I remember a parent coming to me one time and saying to me about a young person who just stayed in the house and played games and they were concerned about them. So in a way, they're at risk. So it can mean a broad spectrum of things. But we mainly try to use sport to get them to feel good and then get them to change. And when I say sport in its broadest terms. We're not a football thing, we're not basketball or boxing or we're anything. It may mean taking someone on a walk or taking them out in a boat or doing some sort of activity that's related to physical activity. So as you can, we all know how to feel after we finish some sort of physical activity. Mightn't be good during it, but after it we'll feel okay.
Yeah, probably. So that's obviously where you're at and what you're doing at the minute. So I want to find out a bit about how a person like yourself gets to this point. So growing up, whereabouts exactly did you grow up? Where were you born and bred?
Don't like to tell people this.
Well,
we
roughly,
were
give us the postcode.
we were living in my family's from Shortstrand,
Okay.
and then my ma got a flat in Turf Lodge. So we lived in Turf. We were there for 2 years or something, and I was born in Turf Lodge. So I don't want a lot of people knowing that, but hopefully a lot of them will not watch. And then from there, we moved down into Spring Hill, West Strat Drive, the grey brick houses at Corpus Christi years ago. And I grew up there until I left there when I was 22.
So what years would that have been? About 10, about 20, 30 years ago you grew up there, or what year we're going back to?
I was born in 1967. So 2 years before 69 when the conflict broke out.
Yeah. So what's an average day for a child of maybe say 7 or 8 back then, on the streets like? What do you get up to? What do you do? Is there anything there for you to do or?
Well, there was rats. There wasn't really any sort of youth provision. There was youth clubs, but if there was a rat, you were more likely to go to the rat than you were to. And where I lived, it was beside the bungalows, and the Brits and Peelers used to come through. And so when people think about rat, and they think about interfaces, but rats were just in nearly every street when I was growing up. So it was pretty much hard to get away from. And maybe the only time you really would have went into the house would have been when there was a shooting or something like that, or a bombing. But we would have run about the graveyard or up the Black Mountain, down, and you just anywhere, it's really different now, when you see the pictures on social media of kids, on their phones or on their iPads, or, we had nothing like that. So you were out, if you had a bike, you were out on your bike, or you were out running up a mountain, or you were, there was lots of stuff to do. And it was good crack, while it was a time that was quite dangerous, it was also, we had a really good childhood outside, growing up. We were big groups of friends who ran about together and done lots of risky behaviour, I suppose.
Yeah. So researching you, I've came across an article, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but 1972 Spring Hill shooting, Father Fitzpatrick, were you there, or did you bear witness to anything, or?
Well, at that time, that was a year after the Ballymurphy massacre. And at that time, St. John's, a GAA club?
Yeah.
Well, that was at the back of our houses. So when the shooting had started from Curry's, we were only kids. I was only 5 or something. And we were refugees. We were taken to Dublin. And what they done was they carried us out through our windows, and then through the next window in the house, and then through the next one. And then we got to the Corrigan Park on the wall. So they had knocked a hole in the wall. So we then went in through the hole in the wall and were taken across Corrigan and out onto the White Rock Road, where there was transport waiting for us to be brought to Dublin as refugees. So there was, some of my family were still in the house. Father Fitzpatrick was shot outside. Him and Paddy Butler, the same bullet went through both of them, and he was carried into the house and he died there.
So did you have any knowledge that had happened, or were you off the scene at the time, or?
Well, you knowledge, because when you come back, everybody was talking about it, and I always remember it. I remember not being there. I always remember being taken to Dublin, and they were trying to split us all up into different houses, and I remember being in the state, because they were saying to your mother, you can go there and the kids can go there, and I remember panicking and thinking, I don't want to leave my mom. So I cried and got to stay with her, where the other ones didn't, so it was, at that time, Paul, it wasn't unique to hear about a shooting, and it wasn't unique to hear about a priest. He was actually the second priest who had been killed. And I remember I have a younger brother, a year younger than me, who was cursing from we were no age, and Father Mullen was killed the year before. And I always remember my ma saying that Father Mullen had been in the house and said, "Don't worry, you'll grow out of it." And she used to tell that story right up until she died, and I had never grew out of it. So there was lots of people being killed. There was lots of innocent people being killed. I remember watching from the back window IRA volunteers on the roof of the house facing me. And I didn't know what it was then, but it was a Sten gun, and they were firing in the Curries, and the British Army were firing back, and that's where the priest had been killed from. There was British soldiers stationed in Curry's timber yard, and they fired in the R Street. They initiated the shooting, and they fired in the R Street, and there was 5 people killed, and one was a priest who was carried into our house. So,
even though you weren't there, thinking back, and you sort of, I can remember researching something, and there's an article about people they don't actually remember the occurrence, they remember the memory. So for you, thinking back, it almost, in a sense, sometimes does it sort of feel that you were there and involved in it, and at such a young age? How does that affect you? Like most 5-year-olds can't even tie their shoes, and you're bearing witness to people shooting over into your street. How does that affect you, then through your younger age? Are you anxious? Are you a nervous child? Or
Well, I was a very quiet kid. I'm probably always nervous, but this is something I talked to a guy about who was 10 years older than me, who lived in Ballymurphy. Me and him were on the plane. We're coming back from London. And we were talking about growing up during that time in this area. At that, I remember coming out of primary three. What are you doing, primary three, 7 or something?
yeah, well, my wee lad's 6 and he's going into primary 3 now, so six or
We were
7.
coming out, we were getting into primary 4. And the way our school was, you had a wee yard, which was, there was all women teachers. And then you went into the big yard in primary 4, and it was all male teachers. And there was a teacher then that we knew who, if we went into primary 4, you would be sexually abused by him. And the guy who was 10 years older than me knew that as well. So that was something that was ongoing. And I was lucky enough not to go into his class, but other people were. So you had that. Then you had, my dad was a violent alcoholic when I was around 5, 6. So he was, it was domestic abuse and domestic violence. So you had that. Then you would have had the school where not only was there the chance of being sexually abused, but if you said the wrong thing, we were beat with a leather strap. There were straps that says, like cricket bats, and they used to beat you. You used to put your hands out like that. And put your hand out like that, and that was as kids. So you had that punishment in school. You maybe had your dad who was a violent alcoholic, and you had gun battles and bombs going off. And then we all know about the church. So you could be growing up and there was no real safe place. You grew up in a house where your dad, and my dad's behaviour wasn't unique to my family. It was quite common, and it took me a long time to understand his position. But, he was born in 1929 in a Protestant state for Protestant people. And he was just not lucky to be born in a Catholic house. So, and it was in an infield that was the Short Strand, which was, surrounded by Unionists and Loyalists. And my mother was born in 1929 too. So, but that's only like, the state was formed in 1922. So they're born into a sectarian state with discrimination at its height. So how did he become the man he was? And a lot of it was alcohol. Growing up, I saw a lot of alcohol, and it was like self-medication, because people hid in the bottle. So you had that, and you had the experiences of a war, on the street. I never seen our streets without heavily armed British soldiers and tanks and jeeps and 6-wheelers and all the different war materials that they brought with them. I never experienced a street without that until I was 31. It was funny, the other night the helicopter was up, and my daughter texted me and says, "A helicopter, what's it up for? It's doing my head in, blah, blah, blah." And she's 24. And the helicopter being up was really annoying her because she's never experienced it. When I was 24, you'd have looked up into the sky to see if it was there or not, because you just heard it all the time, because it was constantly there. And that was it was a real battlefield. So if you picture someone in America who had a violent alcoholic father who comes from an affluent background, they'd be in therapy. If you had someone who was beaten by their teacher, they'd be in therapy. You had someone who had experienced the trauma and the effects of conflict on people, they would have been in therapy. So if you put all of that together into someone who's growing up as a child, who in had never experienced, people of my generation never experienced peace until you were in your 30s. So that's something that we never really take into consideration when we're looking at all of the trauma that people have experienced. And I was lucky enough because I didn't lose a family member during the conflict, but I know people who did. So on top of all of that, and going into school, and if you lost someone with a conflict, looking back on it and thinking about it in that way, you're very lucky to come out the other end with yourself intact. And I don't think any of us did come out intact. I think we all have different coping mechanisms, and I think that when you put it into that context and you think about it, you're lucky to have survived it.
Definitely. I'm going to ask you something, and I hope you have an answer for me, because it would actually be heartbreaking if you didn't. But you're saying there, you're getting hit in school. Your dad's an alcoholic. There's conflict on the streets. The Catholic Church, the abuse that's going on in there, and the abuse that's going on in school, and just even the thought of it, like you just bring it up, it actually makes me feel physically sick. So where do you turn to at that age for help? Is it your mother? If you needed to talk, there's somebody there, surely, yeah.
Yeah, my mom would have been probably the strongest person I ever met. And she was your mother and your father, and she was everything that you needed. And she was a really, really strong woman, but you never would have got that impression from her. And a lot of the women, during the conflict, women were really the backbone of what was happening, And my dad, he ended up late 40s, early just 50 maybe. He took cancer, then he took a thing called premature senility, which is just, he went senile. And he was taken into Purdy's-Burn, it was called then. So he left the house when I was 13. So our lives changed. But I'm the second youngest of a family of 8, and I have brothers 16 and 17 years older than me. Sisters 19 and 20, or 18 and 19 years older than me. So we were different generations. And I was lucky enough because while they didn't really grow up during a conflict, I didn't have to experience the lives that they did, right up until their late teens. So she was very, very strong, and you were very grounded because of your mother. But she was from the Lower Falls, and there was strength with her that you just felt that she would protect it. And I remember somebody asking me about a situation in my life, how scared I was. And I was never as frightened of anything as it was of my dad when I was a kid. He scared me. He really, really scared me. And I was never as frightened of anything as much as I was scared of him. So in a way, he gave me a good grounding for life too. And while I went through life at times, resenting them and hating them and all of that stuff, I've now got to a point in life where I understand, what his upbringing must have been like, how he must have became the person that he was, and the traumas that he maybe experienced. So I don't hold any of it against him. I try to understand it. I just try to do a better job with my own kids.
Yeah. Was it a relief whenever he gets taken away, in a sense that an element of fear is gone? Like one element of fear, you say there's about 5 or 6 there. Like,
yeah,
is that a relief?
Yeah, it was me and my younger brother, especially. It was a gag, and that's terrible, maybe thing to say, but it gave us a sense of freedom, that he was no longer there.
So, your dad, he leaves. He's in hospital, so he's off the scene. you get into your teenage years, do you find yourself sort of getting into trouble or strain without a father figure, or does your mother provide that?
No, my mother provided that.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did. And during the time when I was growing up, there was a lot of joyriding and stuff. Uh, I never ever was anywhere near it. I didn't drink, didn't take. It wouldn't have been drugs then, it would have been hallucinating.
Hmm.
I didn't do any of that. And the reason I didn't do it was my mother, because of the way she had us, um, the way she had brought us up and the influence she had over us, and you really didn't want to hurt her because you knew, at 14, 15, 16, you knew she had suffered enough with the life she had. So you didn't want to do anything that was too risky that would hurt her.
Yeah. So as you get older, obviously, and there's no hiding place from it. As I said before we come on air, you type in Jim Donnelly to Google, the first thing that comes up is Belfast, and then IRA. So obviously,
Jim
growing up
Donnelly, really common name.
with your picture beside them.
No,
So obviously, you get involved in the troubles. How does that come about? Does that come about more through anger of what you see going on around you, or is it like through like basically not having anything else to do? You're out in the streets rioting and whatever. How does that come about?
well, I think you have to, understand the time, and you have to think about what took place during my childhood and how I got to a point where I felt that the only avenue open to me was violence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not supposed to touch your nose or anything with COVID. I keep doing it. Violence, I felt, was the last straw. If you look at it, you had the experience of a priest and the people who were killed around your own house.
Yeah.
There was innocent, like I remember the innocent Danes, and there was a girl whose family lived there by loyalists, just in a garage, probably there. And she was only a girl, 19 or so. And you had that, and you had other people. And I remember as a kid when a car used to come into our street, we used to hide because of the Shankill butchers. So you knew that the Shankill butchers were coming out and that they were killing Catholics for being Catholics. You knew that the British Army were shooting people. I remember when I was 14 during the hunger strike. That was a big influence on my life, the hunger strike and what the hunger strikers done. But also that time I remember two girls from West Belfast, Julianne Livingstone and Caroline Kelly. They were 14 and 12, and they were shot with plastic bullets and killed. And they were never, these were kids who were out just playing on the street. And I remember being at the top of Spring Hill, and the RUC used to drive up and fire plastic bullets down the street. So that was how I had grew up. And I had taken an interest in youth work when I was 16 because there was no youth committee. There was a Spring Hill Community Centre, and there was a new committee came on. And we went to one of the fellas a guy called Hacker Heath, who was around the committee. And we were saying, how do we know about doing stuff for us? And he says, well, why don't you set up a committee? So we set up a committee, and I became the chair of the committee. And so we started running their own events in the club and stuff like that. And then when I was 18, I done the stage one in youth and community work, which was the first qualification I ever got. So I wasn't coming at it being a crazy, I wanted to try and do the right thing for the community that I lived in. And I think, at that time, I felt that the only way I could change what was happening in our community was to fight back. So I became involved in the conflict, and that was when I was young, and then I was arrested, and I was 22 when I was arrested, and I was sentenced to 22 years, and then I was released when I was 31, and during the Good Friday Agreement, so I got out early. So that was that was why, there wasn't, why all of that stuff made you angry. It was a very calculated decision, because when you went and you put yourself forward to become involved, they done everything to try to discourage you. They told you that the only things that were open to you, and the only things that they could promise would happen to you, was if you were lucky you would go to jail, and if you weren't you'd die. So it was made quite clear to you, and then you had to go through a process before you got to a point where you could be active. So that was it was. So you had to take a real, when you look at it now, I look at kids at 18 and 19, and you're thinking about it, going, Jesus, well, I like that when I was 18 or 19, and if I was, how did they end up doing what I've done, and it's good that kids are different now, because, as I says, my 24-year-old doesn't, has no recollection whatsoever of the conflict.
So obviously you mentioned a lot of things there that obviously angered the community, and you weren't the only one that felt that way and that they took up arms, and fought back. Whenever the IRA is referred to as terrorists, does that leave a bitter taste, in the sense of you're only trying to protect your own community, and oh, sorry, I'm saying that whenever you are referred to, even nowadays, as terrorists, does it affect you in a sense that almost like you were doing it to protect yourselves and your community, that you weren't being offered any protection? Does it leave a bitter taste whenever you hear people say stuff like that, when the thoughts in your head what you were fighting for?
No, it doesn't, because I know how I was viewed in my community. I know that when I was arrested, people were shocked. And I know that when I was released, people were, I always remember walking down the street, and there was these two women, and they only got out of jail, that I hadn't seen, obviously, from before with them. Mm-hmm. And they were crying, and they were hugging you, and they were telling you, how proud they were of you. And, so people can call you whatever they want, sticks and stones and all of that. Yeah. I don't really care what anybody calls me or what anybody thinks of me. I know why I done it, and I know one thing we have to ensure is that, there's this former RUC man who, probably similar to myself, that he works in the charities with. And I've heard him say, at times he says he said at the Martin McGuinness, he can't understand how someone could walk up to a house and place a bomb under a car and walk away and go home, knowing that policeman was going to get into the car and maybe get blew up. Well, that's what I was arrested, I was arrested placing a bomb under a policeman's car, and the RUC were waiting on me. They were in the house waiting on me, and they come out. It was 2 days after the bookies at the bottom of the White Rock where 3 people had been killed. So it was 2 days after that. So it wasn't really politically the right time for them to kill us. So we were lucky, and we were arrested and went to jail. But the reason I'm saying that is because you have to put yourself into the shoes of a 22-year-old who at that time felt that they were doing the right thing. And the reason you felt you were doing the right thing was because of the conditions you lived in, you grew up in, you experienced, and the conditions that got you to 22. I'm now 53. Would I do the same thing now? No, because there is no conditions that got me to do it when I was 22. And what we have to ensure is that we don't ever allow them conditions that come back. We're 22-year-old, or younger than that and older than that. People go to jail, died, and you were going out to fight one of the most sophisticated armies in the world, and you maybe get trained in a house on a gun. You know, so you have to think about why would someone do that? Because they felt that that was the only avenue left open to them. So I don't really care about what people want to brand me. People who know me know why I done it, and they know the reasons that led up to me doing it. And when I think about that RUC man and what he says about I can't understand for the life of me how an RUC man can go home and sleep after killing a 12-year-old girl or a 14-year-old girl with a plastic bullet. So he can point out things that the IRA done and say it was terrible and it was this, but we can all point out things. And we can all point out things that made us physically sick. But what we have to ensure collectively is people don't feel that again. And we have to make sure that we find a peaceful way out of all of this.
Yeah. So whenever you come out of prison, at what point do you sort of make a change in the sense of, I don't even mean in terms of the community work, I just mean in terms of like opening yourself up to change, to moving forward, in respect of, like accepting the way you're talking now that all the conflict is in the past? Is
Well,
it
I
hard to
think it
move?
happened
Is it?
before I got out. So I think it happened while I was in prison, because there was a whole, as I said, I left school with no qualifications. The only thing I was really interested in school was Irish history. I wasn't really interested in anything else. And I had a teacher called Jimmy McDermott, and he made it interesting, and I liked that. But I never left school, so I never really had any sort of formal education. And when you went in there, the Republican wings were all about education, but education in a different way. It wasn't just about qualifications. It wasn't about trying to have a memory test. It was about challenging yourself, challenging your thinking. We looked at other conflicts throughout the world. We looked, and you come to realize that in a political conflict, it has to be a political resolution, and you're not always going to get what you want. And when I went into jail, the Berlin Wall was coming down. Mandela was being released from prison. I always remember him saying that he had to leave his bitterness at the gate. If someone who came through what he came through can talk like that, it's something that you can take, thinking from. But also, I always remember the quote from Bobby Sands: "Our friends will be the laughter of our children." And I can see that. You can see it in West Belfast. You can see it when you're driving up and down a Falls Road. You're in school, when you have college sports, and you have the GAA clubs, and you have all of the stuff. And I think that's something that we need to look at. That's something that we need to be thinking about, how we ensure that continues. So can't really remember what you asked me there. So
Well, you basically answered it in the way you spoke about Nelson Mandela, that you basically have to change your whole outlook, because whenever you go into prison, your like mindset is, I'm at war here. And whenever you come out in, what is it, 97, 98, and around then, things are starting to come to an end, because that would probably be, I'm born in 90, so that would be my earliest probably memories of the troubles. The only thing of the troubles I remember is just the army men walking about the street, and we used to run over and say, "Here, can I look through the scope of your gun?" So you're sitting like they're top down at your neighbour's driveway, and they're just sitting there like doing nothing, but it's still obviously procedure for them, and we think we're run over, whereas like 5, 6 years, 10 years earlier, like you wouldn't have been allowed anywhere near them, and we're thinking like, this is like an army man, like an action man that I see on TV.
Well, if you get a chance, I'd advise you to look back over the course of the conflict when the British Army were here.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll find is that you'll find lots of photos all during the time for 30 years when they had kids down looking through their scopes. And they had kids, it was a practice that they used because
Protection.
if someone was down sitting beside them or they were beside kids then and the sniper was sitting waiting to get a clear shot, you couldn't do it. If there was a bomb behind the wall and there was a lane out, the IRA volunteer couldn't hit the lane if there was kids there. So that was a way of them protecting themselves.
It's amazing that something like that never entered my head, and thankfully it didn't, because I think I was probably one of the first generations that it was totally sort of gone as we were growing up, which is great, and the way I was brought up, it was just that there was good and bad on both sides of the community, and that's just the way things were. There's good and bad people everywhere. So basically, I just feel as time moves on that we just sort of need to try and leave that stuff as best we can behind. But obviously there is a point of it that will influence certain people because of what they've went through. Like even yourself, some of the stuff you're saying that you've had to suffer, but what it's brought out in you, I would say, is probably the best person that you can now be in terms of what you're putting back into the community. So to lead on from that, when do you start to sort of steer in that direction again after you come out?
Well, before I answer that, I get that there is good on both sides and there's all that stuff, and I think there's a mistake in the narrative that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
When you say both sides, what it really means is it's down to a sectarian headcount, that it's both sides of the community are divided, and I never got involved because of Protestants. So and I'm not a Catholic, so and that change in my religion has been responsible for most of the wars throughout history. But I said to you that my parents were born in 1929. If my parents had been born 10 years before that, in 1919, they would have been born in Ireland, and they would have been Irish for all intents and purposes. However, because of the division that was created in the country after a democratic election had taken place, where the overwhelming majority of the island of Ireland have voted to break the links with Westminster, there was a state created, and that state was created in a way that there was always going to be conflict, because you can't really, it's like some of the conflicts that are happening, Palestine as an example. People could say there's good and bad on each side. People could say there's good and bad on each side in South Africa and apartheid. And apartheid was created by imperialists who invaded a country and then tried to take control of it, and they did take control of it. And the indigenous people in that country weren't allowed to drink out of a water tap, travel on a bus, because of the way they were treated. And that's what happened in Ireland too. So that would be my view of it. Now, I totally accept, and I've had lots of discussions with loyalists, and I totally accept that people's other people's view is different, but that's my view of it, and I can point to historical facts and my experiences of why I would have that view. So that's just the answer that part of it, even though you didn't ask me a question.
Yeah.
But what I would say, it was a couple of years after I got out of jail. There was my kids went to Bonstones Levergive, and they were trying to raise some money for to get the nursery, the knee school, moved down to the new site of the school. So I got involved with that, and I started a cycle from Belfast to Donegal. So we used to do that every year. We've done it for 10 years. And I was also involved in developing residents associations. I was the chair of Ballymurphy Residents Association, and then I went on. We developed a federation of residents for the Upper Springfield. So we had something like 11 residents groups lobbying, and a lot. It was around a time when there was a community safety forum in the Upper Springfield, and that came out of stuff that had happened in Ballymurphy when George Devlin was killed, and we had then there was funding brought in, and the community safety forum was developed. I was involved in residents associations, but also coming out of the cycle, the school got moved, and Philip, who was the principal at the time, offered us the use of the mugga. And so me and Oliver Pollock and Jamie Conlon and a number of others got together because we were all on the cycle, and we formed Common Sport and Football, which is known as CSP now. And we developed that, and some of the young people who were on about the Murph then got involved. We were able to use a mugga, play football, and then develop, and we built, like, got a mini bus, and we built a wee thing around that. And a lot of that was to do with, using sport and physical activity. I never was really into sport at all, or physical activity. When I was a kid, don't want to sound like Tiny Tim here, my poor upbringing, and I wore a caliper on my leg, so I couldn't walk. So it didn't do sport, or I still see when you see kids when it's cold in the winter making sleds on the flowing water down and freezes over and sled. I still couldn't do that. I couldn't do that as a kid because I was too worried about it. So my coordination wasn't good. So I didn't get involved in sport or physical activity until I was in prison. And I then felt really good about myself, how my body, so I realized the positive impact that sport could have. So when I got out and I had done a bit of youth work and I'd done some of the stuff that we had looked at in prison about other struggles and how, you go into your community, and what Bobby Sands had done really in Twinbrook too was quite inspiring, so I wanted to try and involve myself in the community to try and provide better opportunities so as we could have a day when our events will be the laughter of our children. And that's how we ended up forming the ASB. And so that developed on from there to I ended up working for Integrated Services for Children and Young People. And then a Active Communities Network had approached me. They had heard about what we were doing, and they approached me and they asked me if they were able to access something, would we be willing to work with them. So I says, aye, but you just thought it was another group coming to you, because we had other groups coming to us because we were actually being very successful with young people in the area. So you had these groups coming to you and offering you resources and offering you, and I remember a group coming to me one time and saying, we have the money, we can use have the young people. And I said, these are all the youth workers, these are qualified. Why don't you do it? So you just expected people to come to you but never follow through. But then they come back and it says, we have 100 grand from Comic Relief. We were successful in an application, and this is what we're going to build a program around that you were doing, what CSP was doing. So they called it the Goals Project, generating opportunities and learning through sport. So I applied for the coordinator's post, and I got the coordinator's post. So I ran that program for 2 years, just in Ballymurphy. And then at the end, near enough at the end of that program, Laureus Sport for Good Foundation, Sean Fitzpatrick, who was the captain of the All Blacks, remember the Invictus film?
Yeah.
He's the captain of the side that compete. He doesn't really mean them of that, but he came and he visited us in Ballymurphy. And he went into the bum school and he done the hackle with the kids and all of that type of stuff. And they funded us, I think it was £50,000. It was the Urban Stars project, and it was Belfast, London, Birmingham, Manchester. There were 6 cities that they funded, give £50,000 each for 50,000 for 3 years, each year. And we were on a program based on that. And then the Goals Project, the University of Ulster, had given us had done the research on the Goals Project, and they'd done an impact report. And it was a really good report, and it recommended our work. So we used that and we built on it, and we then started to develop. And I became the project manager then. And then we moved on to the next thing we done was a youth engagement project with Belfast City Council, using our methodology, using what we were trying to do. So then we went on to that, and we were able to access more funding, and we built up. So after the Goals Project, or during the end of it, there was really just me. There's another guy that worked with me, but then he left, and there was just really me. And we built up the organisation we ended up working in Coleraine, Portadown, Omagh, Strabane, some other areas, and we've done some work cross-border. And we've done some work in Uri as well. So I ended up going through coordinator, project manager, program manager, head of programs. That was good. When the chief executive was telling me about this, what they wanted to do, and the Asda Foundation had come in and funded us 600,000 for 3 years to run programs in Omagh, Portadown, Coleraine, and a number of sites in Belfast, Dundonald and West Belfast. And he says to me, "We have an issue here. Your role's going to change." And I went, "Right, okay." And he says, "But it's going to be head of programs." And I went, "Right, okay." And he says, "For Northern Ireland." And I says, "This is a guy from London." I says, "Where?" And he says, "We'll have to find a way. We'll have to find a way here to sort this, because you're going to be working across the 6 counties." And I says, "Well, just NI." So it became head of programs NI. And then a couple of years later, I was asked to take on a role in a restructuring of the organisation to become the director of programs for the whole organisation. So all of our sites across the different areas, the heads of programs would have reported to me. So Portsmouth, London, Manchester, Belfast, they reported to me. And then there, on the 1st of April, we done another review of the organisation and how we could best use the resources that we had. We done this with the board, with the board of trustees, and we looked at the senior management team and how we could slim that down so as we could get the best results on the ground, because the delivery is the most important thing. So the chief executive left on the 31st of March, and I became an executive director, as did a guy called Ali Rahman in London. And so we are both running the organisation between us. And the reason why we were trying to do stuff like that was because we wanted to ensure that any resources that we had could be best used in the delivery of the service.
Yeah. Is there ever a point that whenever you first originally start getting into the youth work, in the back of your mind, do you ever think that I'm doing this because of the kids could have been affected mentally in things that were going on in the streets, or not even in the streets, just in their lives in general? Because recently there's been videos and articles about yourself, about the work you've done with mental health. Was that sort of like the reason behind maybe steering the kids into sport? And does that ever enter your mind, or did you just want to do something for the community?
Well, it did, if I'm honest. Even before I got involved with Active Communities Network, I had done a higher professional diploma in counselling. So I had experience with that. So some of the stuff that I'd learned there, and I heard just talking on some of your, when I watched some of your podcasts, I heard just talking about CBT.
Hmm.
So CBT, I had done part of my diploma was around that, but it was around other aspects of psychotherapy and counselling. And so I saw the benefit of that, and I saw the benefit of how we could start to move forward in a way that if you get young people into sport, and I think that the AA in particular are a really good example. You know how they use that now. And I know there's mental health issues around the GAA as well, but if if I'm 53, and I explain to you my childhood and what I experienced growing up, am I traumatized? Absolutely. Is there transgenerational trauma? Of course there is. Have I had issues around mental health? Definitely. Do I suffer from anxiety? Absolutely. Um, so my experiences led me to a place where I felt that if we could use the like a CBT and sport, education, and youth work practices and try to bring that all together, there was a way that we could have a positive impact on young people. And we could create young people, we could help young people create themselves as positive role models in the area or across what I don't like saying is get them out of, I've heard people talk about getting you out of your where you come from. That isn't what I mean. I mean, if even if you weren't in and if you were my age and you weren't involved in the conflict and your dad wasn't involved in the conflict and your dad's dad wasn't involved, but if you were my age, say in 1972, you were 5 and your dad was out working and he wasn't like my dad and he was coming home one day and he witnessed either the IRA killing somebody or the British Army killing somebody. And that could have been a bomb blowing somebody up, or it could have been a woman walking down the street and shot by the British Army. And if you're walking home and you witness that, that's a really traumatic experience for you to deal with. And there was no counselling then. There was no psychotherapy or CBT or anything. There may well have been in other places, but there wasn't here. And so men then self-medicated, and they self-medicated with alcohol.
Hmm.
And if you were 6 or 7 living in that house, and your dad was coming home from work, and any other time he was coming home from work, you run to him and he picked you up and and you had a stable household, then your dad has that experience and he comes home and he starts drinking. So when he's coming in, he's drinking. Then it's affecting the kids. Then his wife, you know, then starts there's fights happen within the house. Then, at that time, when I was a kid, if my mother would have been outspoken to my father, she would have got slapped. And that was unacceptable from his generation. That was what they thought was the norm. Totally and absolutely wrong. That's where they were. And so then what you would have witnessed was domestic abuse. And you witness that, then the trauma that happened to your dad then starts to impact on you. And if you're 7 or 8, and then you get to a point where you're 14, and that's like 7 years later, and your dad has become an alcoholic, and your mother is maybe using medicine, using medication to medicate herself because of all that has went on. What then would have been said was, see him on there, he's a bastard, the way he treats his wife and his kids. But no one would have really looked at, well, what was the trigger that got him to be in that position? But then the young person who was in that house at 14, 15, maybe starts drinking and becomes an alcoholic. And that's something that you could actually look around West Belfast and you could see where that has happened. Or, the amount of abuse that took place and stuff like that, and people medicated through alcohol and stuff, and if you look even now, during the lockdown. And you drive around West Belfast, and two of the places you're going to see queues is the pharmacy and the off license every single time. So, we've come through all of that, and you can't be in a position where that happens and it not have a lasting effect. So that kid who's 7 had a great life up until he was 7. His whole life changed. And his whole life changed in a way that he then maybe became a parent who thought it was okay to drink and thought it was okay maybe to hit your partner. And that then cycle continues. So how do we break that cycle? How do we get to a point where we look at that? So you can't really look at all of the stuff that's happening at the minute in isolation. You can't, when it says about, I heard one of the people being interviewed in your podcast, and he said CBD instead of CBT. So there's CBD, which is the cannabis oil, and people get that, then they're going to have a different approach.
Yeah.
But what he meant was CBT, but CBT is something that can be used in certain situations. And for me, the difficulty is that with mental health issues now, here, it's one size fits all. And I know some of the stuff that I have said was maybe seen as being controversial. Some of the responses on Twitter and stuff like that. Some of the responses are because it was me that said it, and some people saying, well, I've had a number of people die that I know about mental health. And what you find is then people start to talk about mental health in a way that they haven't studied it. They have no qualifications in it. They have no, but what you'll find is there's a lot of experts. And if you've a couple of people in your family that die from cancer, you don't then start giving advice about cancer. And if you look at cancer and you look at the way society's response to cancer, is that I have experience of a young person, a female, 20, 21, attempting to take her own life. And we ended up working with her and getting the doctor. We had to force the doctors to speak to her. And he spoke to her on the phone. And he asked her a list of questions. There was a questionnaire and he asked her a list of questions. And then he prescribed antidepressants, quite heavy antidepressants over the phone. Now, if she had went to him with a physical health problem, and say it was a lump on her chest, right? And then I go to him with a lump on my chest, his approach is going to be completely different because I'm a 53-year-old man, she's a 21-year-old woman. But if I had have contacted him about a mental health issue, he would have took the same approach as he took with a 21-year-old. So for me, that's wrong. For me, that's something that we need to try to address. And if you look at it, you look at America at the minute, there's more people, more veterans taking their own life from Iraq than what there was killed during the conflict in Iraq. You look here, from 1998, more people died through suicide than took their own life or died during the conflict. So if you've all them billions of pounds and being pumped into defeating the IRA and having all the military apparatus and that still exists, why can't we have that resources put into trying to address the remnants of the conflict and the transgenerational trauma? And I heard again on one of your podcasts people talking about you have to get the assembly and you have to get Westminster. This state is economically unviable. It doesn't work economically. Well, when you talk about going to the assembly and asking the assembly to do A, B, or C in response to the National Health Service, for instance, and the waiting lists that are here. If they don't have the resources, it's like asking you as a plumber to go and fix a leak, but you're not allowed to bring any tools with you. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's something that we need to look at, because as it is, if we had an all island health service, we might be able to have different responses. We might be able to bring stuff together. You know, and this isn't me coming as a Republican, this is me coming as someone who has witnessed quite a lot of hardship and death and mental health issues for young people. And it's about, and that doesn't know any debate, it doesn't know whether you're, and if we continue to go on the way we're going on, because CBT at the minute is popular, and everybody who has a view of a mental health issue is talking about CBT. But CBT is only one strand of one therapy that can be used. People may have a deficiency in their brain that needs medicated. So if you're going to be asked a questionnaire, and the amount of people that's dying, and we're taking a one-size-fits-all approach to it, and in a way, you know, some of the things I was challenged on and what I was saying was when I says that, you know, you're not going to party with the angels, you're not going to be forever young, you're going to be dead. And that's the reality of it, you're going to be dead. And I was saying about young people who, as part of a problem solving structure in their mind, there is young people now who have a thought which does pop into their head, because I was challenged on saying that. But that thought, when you're trying to resolve a problem now, I'm a parent, and I know as a parent, and I know other parents who are fearful of disciplining their kids because they're worried that their kid might say, I'll kill myself. So as a problem solving mechanism within young people at the minute, they do say, I'll kill myself. Because that it has become a way of life here. We have had more people died in 21 years than we had in the conflict for 30 years. So it's become something that no one hasn't experienced or hasn't, but I can't wait until, someone who belonging to me dies through suicide before I can say we need to take a different approach. And if you look at the approaches that we're taking, if you look at the way, you know, some of the funerals or some of the aftermaths or some are conducted, it's actually counterproductive for that to happen. You know, T-shirts with photographs, balloons and birds being released, and beatbox playing and dancing and all of this type of stuff. In my view, if we're not careful about the way, and I think it's past the point of being careful about the way that we talk about suicide and the way that we approach suicide, you know, we're in danger of making it popular. And your mental health problem and my mental health problem will be different. If I get cancer in my lungs and you get a cancer in your kidneys, they're going to be treated differently.
Yeah.
But the probably the most complex organ within your body is your brain. And we're trying to address it with a one-size-fits-all approach. So that for me is something that I think needs challenged, and something that I think until we do start to challenge the narrative around, you know, I've been at vigils where I've witnessed people saying, you know, all the young people take out your phones and put suicide awareness number in, or put Lifeline's number in, or put, why? Just because you're at a vigil doesn't mean And if you look at it, the clusters that happen, you know, after someone takes their own life, I witnessed it through working with young people, where someone has taken their own life, and then people who had no intention, had no problems. Well, I probably had problems, but they had no intention, or they had no desire. But then the stuff that happens after that, the grief, how you deal with it, how you move forward, then they become at risk of taking their own life. So that's stuff that we need to be looking at. That's probably an incident where CBT could work. But if somebody's living with depression for years, and they get to the point where they're suicidal, and it's when the doctor says, well, I'll do this list, and then pick off, and then, but if you go with cancer or heart condition, or, you know, we have the eye, nose, and throat, we have orthopedic, we have all of these different approaches to physical health, and we have one approach to mental health. Now, we don't, there's lots of approaches out there, but here we don't have the resources to try and address it. And for me, it's down to inequality, and that's something where we need to look at the inequalities.
Do you think that there is even a way that we could sort of like beat the process in a sense, like get them before it even becomes an issue? Like, is there more could be done in terms of youth initiatives to, you know, basically take kids' minds away from this and give them hope in another aspect? Because when I was 17, 18, 19, I had been heavily involved in stuff to do with youth work, and then once all that goes, you sort of, right, how do I spend my time here? Right, I'll go out and drinking. Then you start drinking too much. But is there a way that that you can be done more, in a sense, that people don't get to this point? Because there's definitely not enough that's being done after the fact. It's before the fact. Could that do you think there could be anything done there? You know, and sort of like the CSP thing to me seems as if that's definitely getting at the point that I'm making. You know, like that's something that you've done before. This is maybe, it could have been worse, let's just say, you know, in that area that you're working in.
Yeah. The difficulty with that is, if I break my arm, I get a cost on it. If I have cancer and I get, you know, sick, or I get chemo, you'll be able to see it. And we have all these programs running at the moment where it's all around prevention.
Yeah.
Well, unless we know who it is we're trying to prevent, you know, because we may have young people who have no intention of, or have never had a suicidal thought, and have never had a mental health issue. Because when I was growing up, given even the circumstances that I grew up in, I remember 2 people who took their own lives when I was a kid, and I knew both of them. But it never gave me any sort of inkling to do that. And the thing about it is, I didn't have any mental health problems then, and there was no desire around suicide. There was no, you know, you never heard of it, you never thought about it, and if you look, our program, we work up until young people are 24. But what we'll have to accept too is we're not going to be able to save everybody. And when we try, and that wears you out too, you know, when you're working in this sort of line of work, you try to save everybody, and which then impacts on yourself. And so for me, one of the biggest things that would benefit is, I remember I talked about the youth engagement project. The youth engagement project was funded through Europe, and it was funded that organisations would come together and deliver a service that would benefit young people in Belfast. Statutory organisations took 2 years to agree an information sharing protocol. which just means that all of the statutory agencies, BRO, Belfast City Council, Department of Education, all of them sort of governing bodies couldn't agree how to share information. And then you go down into the community and people work in silos. So for me, the biggest thing that could benefit, not just around mental health, but around creating better opportunities for people who live in communities, would be that we come together and we work together and we provide a better way of ensuring that the service that we have reaches as many people as it can. And when you have I think it was 7 or 9 statutory organisations, and they are all part of the one, they're all accountable to Stormont, and they can't agree the best way of sharing information, and it takes them 2 years to come up with information sharing protocols. How are we ever going to get to a point where we get the best service out of it? So I think that's something that's crucial, and it may not be a case that it's I've also heard people talk about tackling poverty. As part of my work, I've done a bit of traveling, and I remember being in Lebanon, Beirut, and I was over with. It was a program funded through Europe, and our international development manager, a girl from Bristol, had hurt her back, so she couldn't go. So I was brought in to go, and it was with the British Council, and there was a guy from the British Foreign Office. And we went over, and what we were trying to do was use our methodology to set up projects that would stop young men traveling from Tripoli in the Lebanon across the border into Syria to become fighters. So what we were trying to do was to use so I remember sitting in a room, and we had all these community organizations who work with young people in the Lebanon, and they were all sitting around, and you could have been sitting in the Falls or the Shaka because it was the same issues. It was health inequalities, it was educational underachievement, it was lack of hope, no prospects for work, no way of achieving, right? So if that's in the Lebanon, and it's the same issues that I could have said in Ballymurphy or in Springmartin, and listened to the same issues coming from community organisations. And I've also been to Cape Town and done similar work, same issues. I've worked with people from India, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, worked with them in Dubai. And we done 4 or 5 days with them, and it was the same issues. And then, you look at the whole stuff that's happening at the minute around Black Lives Matter. It's the same issues. It's people from areas of high deprivation where they have educational underachievement, they have health inequalities, they have. So if you look at all of that and you say, well, how can we address? Because when you look at our 4 offices in Belfast, the biggest problem is probably mental health and suicide. In London, it's knife crime. In Portsmouth, it's a thing called county lanes, because what happens is young people, there's a place in Portsmouth called Lee Park where young people are used as trafficking for drugs and stuff like that. So you get big drug dealers coming from London down to there and using kids. Then in Manchester, it's that spice drug, they're gone with that. So, but if you look underneath that, and you look at the areas that we work in them 4 areas, or the area in Lebanon, or the area in the other places that I talked about, it's all the same issues. And the same issues is the structure of the state. It's capitalism. It's how we have the different tiers in our society, and the people at the lower tier have to suffer inequality. And until we start to look at addressing the inequalities that create the way this structured society is, we can't really prevent a lot of the stuff that happens. Because if you look at COVID-19, where is it affecting the most? It's affecting areas of high deprivation the most. Because the kids in London who are involved in the gangs and the knife crime, it's their families, it's them. And if you go into where they lived in built-up areas, and they're ethnic minority, and and that's the thing. Until we start to have the debate about the inequalities that exist, because suicide, if you look here, and you look at where the majority of suicides happen, it isn't in affluent areas of Belfast. Just the way the conflict didn't affect affluent areas of Belfast. And this is how I see it, and I'm happy for people to say you're completely wrong. But even if, I graduated from university last year with a master's degree. When I left school, I was told I was stupid. And it turned out when I went to university, I was going to give up the master's degree because it was just far too much. And I went to my tutor and I said to my tutor about it, and I told him why. And he recommended that I go to an educational psychologist. So I went to the educational psychologist. I was on a computer for 2.5 hours. And then I went and met, and that was there was a computer program. And I run that computer program, and I done the stuff and answered the questions. And then I went and sat with an educational psychologist for nearly 3 hours. So that was 5.5 hours where they took time to assess me. And it turned out that I was dyslexic. So the university gave me help, and I was able to achieve, but that's in my 50, I think I was 51 when I discovered that. That wasn't discovered at school for me. And what you can say is, no problem, but that was that time. It's different now. But I know a young person who was at school, and his parents were pushing to get him statemented, to get him assessed for dyslexia. And there was a trainee educational psychologist came in and sat with him for a half an hour and told his parents that he was borderline dyslexic, because the schools can't afford to give the support that's needed to help that kid. That's inequality, because if there's someone who goes to a school like Rathmore, for instance, the parents may well have the capacity to get that done privately. And it's a postcode lottery. If you're like my dad, who was born into a Protestant state for Protestant people, but he was born into a Catholic. If he had been born into another, if he had been born in the Malone Road, my whole life would have been different.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's a reality still to this day. If the kids in London weren't born in parts of the area where there's gangs, they were born somewhere else, they'd have different opportunities, and they'd have different quality of life. And that's
Absolutely,
yeah. That's the thing that we need to start addressing. And I know it's massive, but you look at COVID and how that has happened and the people that are dying from COVID. You look now at COVID and think about the domestics who work in the hospitals and what the risk they're putting themselves to. And they're the essential workers. You look at a stockbroker. Is he essential? You know, is that type of stuff, you know, but the structure of the state has them up here and has the domestics down here. And even the domiciliary care, you know, you can see people going around now and they have a plastic apron, gloves, and a mask. Is that the right stuff that they should be wearing? But people who do domiciliary care are from our communities, they're from communities, but they're essential.
Yeah.
And they're at the front line of ensuring that people who are sick aren't, you know, contracting COVID and dying. And that's something, you know, so if we don't really take this time with all of the Black Lives Matters and, you know, Trump and Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson and the way they've all conducted themselves during this time and the way they conduct themselves over what happened in America, you know, when are we ever going to do something? When are we ever going to stand up and say enough's enough if we don't do it now?
Yeah, the way they behave and the way they have behaved, it doesn't really fill people with much hope. So it sort of does fall to like the people on the ground in the communities to be pushing, you know, and be sort of they're activists within their own community, you know,
Yeah.
and that's probably going to be the only way forward in a sense that like an individual like yourself and around where you are, somebody in those estates in London, you know, it just takes one person to stand up and then they have to sort of fight for the rights of that community. It's hard to push it through to the government, you know, without everybody, you know, being in the one, you know, the one direction. And as you say, everybody has a different opinion on it, you know, because it's such a touchy subject. So it's hard even to draw the lines of where it needs to go. But
Yeah, it's even difficult for us to talk about it because so many people have been affected.
yeah,
You know, so many people have been affected by mental health problems, but you know, we have to try and look at where that stems from. And you know, if you look at the combatants in America from Iraq, you look at South Africa after the fall of apartheid, you look at all of that stuff, you'll understand that we face the same that they face the same issues that we face and that they have we don't address. We've never addressed the legacy of the conflict. You know, and we're talking about we're living in a society that hasn't addressed that legacy. We're living in a society that has the highest number of suicides, and we're just in another traumatic time with COVID-19 and people dying and people being on lockdown and people, you know, living together and going through a very traumatic experience. You know, the domiciliary care people come back into the house, the domestic people who work in the hospitals come back into the houses. They're the people who are going to suffer the most. And and we need to try and do something that starts to look at society and to look at the way it's structured
yeah,
and to look at the inequalities. If we don't look at the inequalities, you know, once we come out of COVID, kids in London are going to go back to stabbing each other.
yeah.
It's going to be the same.
See, in terms of whenever all this does, we're fully out of lockdown. Have yourself and the organisation, are you starting to put anything in place, you know, to bring the young people back together and give them hope? Is there anything in the pipeline or?
Well, we are working on that at the moment. We're you know today soon. I hate soon because you're never off it now. And you know when I done meetings in London or any of the other areas, you had to fly over, and now you're constantly on. You know, so you're dealing with stuff here and everywhere has their different issues and different complexities. But at the heart of it, it's all really the same issues. So we're trying to find a way, but we're trying to stick to the guidelines because I'm not sure if we'll ever be fully out of lockdown or if social distancing is ever going to be changed. You know, so even if we have kids on a sports program, we're going to have to find a way of doing it that minimizes the risk And it may not be that, I heard a doctor on the TV today talking about kids are really, but that's we kids are really sort of unlikely to get it and die. But if they carry it back into the house, especially in houses where you maybe have 2 generations or 3 generations of family living, grandmother maybe there, and the mother, and then the kids. So that's something that the way we have to think. And we have to put measures in place that safeguard our staff and safeguard the young people. And so we're working on it at the minute, and I think all organisations are, but it's the lack of knowledge and it's the lack of direction. If you want a good laugh, you wouldn't go and watch a comedy. You wouldn't turn a comedy channel on. You just wait until the government come out, the BBC, and do their thing. Jesus Christ. Like, you watch that and you're going, they haven't a clue. But they haven't a clue. And the first deaths were in December in China. And they allowed Britain to become the second largest area for death. And you have to wonder if they have a clue or if they really care. And that's the question we'll have to ask ourselves. So we're trying as best we can to get back to where we need to be. We're doing a lot of stuff. We're doing training. There's qualifications being done. There's essential skills being done on Zoom and stuff like that. And there's still group work being done. What we done was with the social action project. And part of the social action project was that young people came together on Zoom and they nominated people from their community, and they were then sent a parcel from a farm, a food parcel, and I can't remember the name of the farm because it was another girl in our office that was looking after, and they felt like they were doing something and they were giving something back. And it was interesting, some of the people that they nominated, because domestics in the hospital, some of them nominated them, because they could see them get out to work and, come back in, and, stuff like that was happening. So we're trying to continue as best we can, and we will be able to get back at some, but we just have to make sure that the measures are right. And until we have more information, we can't really get the measures right because we don't know. And I think that's across the board,
Yeah, massively. But it's just another stumbling block in the road, but another one that we don't really require in this sort of fight against, bad mental health when we're trying to make things better. But we've come through worse than this, so I'm assuming that you'll come through this no problem. But just to wrap us up, we usually just finish with a few wee quick fire questions, just for a bit of crack more than anything. So we sort of covered during lockdown and just in general. So in general, or during lockdown, what have you been watching? What's your favourite TV programmes or movies or anything? Have you watched anything good? Do you watch much TV even?
No, I don't really. I've been watching a bit on Netflix, and I would have watched football if I had them on. No, but there's only so much you can watch. And it got to the point where it's starting to bore me, really. And social media, I got to the point where it's really like, and so one of the things I done was on my phone, like that TikTok is laugh.
You're the last person I thought would have said that.
No, it is. It's a gag. Some of the things they do in their grannies and their grandas. Jesus Christ. So doing stuff like that, it's lighthearted. It's funny. It's, and you just have to try and keep that in mind. And Netflix, you sort of what you're going to, unless somebody recommends stuff, you're going on and you're spending longer actually
looking through it, I know,
than you are watching the program.
Especially if you're sitting with the missus.
Got to the point where I was like, I can't do this, So I don't really watch that much TV. I haven't watched the news in a long time. And I used to be really, really into the news. I used to, obviously, given, being in jail and all that stuff, you watch the news, but nah, I don't.
What about have you been doing much exercise or anything? Just or walking on the bike or anything like that?
I've been doing it for a bit of walking, and what I've been trying to do is relax. By relax, I mean my 16-year-old will argument said to me, says he should have done this or he's 20. My dad's doing that hippie shit. I had candles lit. Had a
Meditation?
yoga mat, and I was trying to do some meditation. But there's these mats you can get. They're like specs. They're all, I can't remember the name of them, but I bought myself one of them.
Uh-huh.
You're lying on it, and it's like it's the same sort of concept as a bed of nails.
Right.
You're trying to, so you're relaxing and you're listening to, like meditation music. You can get it on YouTube and your phone. And so he came in, he looked down at me, and I was lying on the floor, and he goes, Jesus Christ. Yeah, do you see my dad? He's doing that hippie shit. What? So that's what I've been trying to do, because I think relaxation and your thinking is very important at the minute. So, I'll probably, after this, I'll probably go online and have that for a half an hour.
But I think that's a massive thing, from people from your generation, because I could never envisage my dad doing something like that. But I think even the fact that your wee lad's slagging you about it, I think it's massive. Even like a lot of people would say the kids should be, doing it from a young age just to learn more about themselves and relax. So maybe they might eventually stop thinking you're a weirdo and join in or something. Or
They actually listen to meditation on YouTube at night when they're trying to go sleep.
Yeah.
They may not like me saying that, but they do, because they were telling me about good ones. So hopefully people do start to think differently, and I think that's something too that the chapels have all been closed, the churches have all been closed, and there's been no fire and damnation. So many people are back in nature, and you look at some of the stuff that people are putting out. They're out in nature, they're thinking about things differently, they're doing stuff differently. So maybe that'll be one of the good things that come out of it, because if it's spiritual, in a way, I think it benefits you more than religion.
Yeah, you're doing it for yourself and your own self-worth, instead of going somewhere to be preached at. You should be doing this, you should be doing that. I think if everybody just took a wee bit more like time out, relaxed and chilled out, then everybody would sort of be like on an even keel, and we could sort of like get better relationships, and we can speak things through easier than people getting irate and out of control.
And don't get me wrong, like people who know me, hear me saying stuff like that, I'll be going, right, Mr. Angry or Grumpy, or I've been called all sorts of names, but that's just, I think, I was saying to somebody the other day, I remember when I went to jail, I was 22, and you thought you knew everything. And then when I got out, I was 31, and you thought you knew even more. Then you hit 41, and you're going, I'm not too sure. And then see, when you hit 51, you realize you knew fuck off. You know nothing. And
back then,
every day is a school day. But by the time you get to this age, it's probably too late to realize all that.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Well, listen, we'll leave it there. I've still about 6 or 7 other post-its that I had no chance of getting through, because you like to do a wee bit of talking, don't you?
Well, I didn't want you to ask awkward questions.
You were trying to get in before I could. Listen, Jim, cheers, mate. Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, well, thank you.
Good luck. Speak to you soon. Good luck. Bye-bye.